Well, I have 12 o'clock on the dot. So good afternoon and welcome to our presentation on excellent Excel functions with our very own Diane McKeever.
Yay!
Crowd goes wild. But first, a little bit about us here at SCORE. We are a nationwide nonprofit organization that is an independent part of the Small Business Administration. SCORE provides small businesses with free confidential business mentoring, both in person and online, as well as educational services such as this webinar. We have 90 volunteers in our SCORE Minnesota division, serving Manatee and Sarasota counties. And our chapter was recognized as District Chapter of the Year for 2022. What we can do for you, no matter what the stage of your business is in, SCORE is ready to help. If you are just starting and you have an idea about your business, we can help you with that. If you are ready to open up your business, we are also involved with that stage. If you are already in business and you need a little fine tuning, you can give us a call. And we also have a team of experts ready to assist with selling or closing your business. We have a new website, and you can find us at score.org/Minnesota, where you can request a mentor, or you could sign up for a webinar such as this with Diane. And we would not be here if it wasn't for our SCORE sponsors. We would like to thank the SCORE Minnesota sponsors and community partners that we have highlighted here. Now I believe it is time to introduce our presenter, Diane McKeever, someone that I've had the opportunity of working with at SCORE. She is my go-to on every computer and technology question and my mentor in being involved with the education committee here at SCORE. So shall I leave it here? And before I say, take it away, Diane, or would you like me to go to the next one?
No, this is perfect. Thank you.
I'll leave it right here and I'll have you take over.
Thank you, Leo. Oh, actually, bring that slide up again, please.
Okay, one more time.
One more time, because this is kind of an unusual webinar in that I am not using slides per se, but I have put together a slideshow for you. Each of the slides in the slideshow is instructions on how to use one of our functions that I'm going to be talking about today, and a couple of other tips that you need to know about. So when you get your email with the link to the recording of this webinar, and yes, I'm sure it will be asked 12 more times, but yes, in fact, you will be getting a link to the recording of this webinar. You're going to get a PDF of these slides, and you'll also get a copy of the file that I'm using, the Excel file that I'm using for the demonstrations. So the idea is after this session, when you get the link to this webinar, you'll be able to pull up the Excel file and kind of go along with me. I didn't want you to have it in advance because it's very difficult for you to be listening to me and watching me and doing at the same time. So what I would rather that you do is that you have a pencil and paper handy and that you're going to take brief notes, knowing that you're also going to get these slides. There's a note on here. I am using the Excel 365, which is the subscription model of Excel. There are very few things that are different, although the wonderful people at Microsoft are always adding new functions. And in fact, one of the functions that I'm going to show you is a new function, and you may not be able to access it depending upon the version of Excel that you have. So one more click, Leola, and I just want you to see an example of the slide. So this would be an example of creating a formula, and all of the slides that I do have a description, and they also have some samples. So now if you would stop sharing, and I will take over sharing my screen. Okay, let's see. So what is this class today? Oh, let's see. I think it's, I'm pretty sure that it is Excel functions. So if you have any questions, as Leola said, please put them in the Q&A and we'll address them at the end. So this is a series of columns of information. And the thing that we're going to talk about first is the difference between a function and a formula. A lot of what we do in Excel is just simply a formula. It doesn't need a function. It doesn't need anything fancy. Much of what we do in Excel is this times this, or this divided by this, or this times this and then divided by that. And so I wanted to bring to your attention this order of operation. I don't know if you remember this, but according to Google, so it must be true, we all learned somewhere before 6th grade the order of operation. And this little phrase, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, may remind some of you of something that you heard years and years ago. And what we need to tell the computer, or if we were writing it out, not that anybody uses pencil and paper anymore, but if you were telling the computer to do something, this order of operation is really important. Mostly what we use is the parens. And then, of course, the operators, multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction. We don't use exponents, I think, all that often. But the idea is that with parenthesis, you group items and then you say, now take the result of that and do something with it. So keep in mind, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. So if this was data that I had downloaded from somewhere, some computer program, some database, first thing I would do is change the column widths, right? Because I don't know about you, but these pound signs, I don't enjoy looking at them. So what I have done is I just clicked here in the upper left corner of the screen, just above the number 1 and to the left of the letter A. That has selected everything. And then I'm moving my mouse. Right now it's between the letter D and E in the column headings. And I'm just going to do a little click, click right there. And what that does is it assesses the information in all of the columns, and it makes all of the columns the best fit. So maybe what I would do is just quickly do a little format on that just to make it look a little prettier. But you can see that we're missing some formulas. So a formula doesn't require any function. A lot of people use the sum function and then do a formula within that. That's a little bit extra work for yourself. When you're telling the computer that what is going to happen right now is a formula, all you have to do is start with the equal sign. Once you type the equal sign, you have just said to Excel, okay, watch out. Here comes some information that I want you to calculate. So if we want to find out what our revenue is, we know how many units we sold, and we know what the price of each one is. You can imagine that once we type the equal sign, we would say, well, it equals this, which is the number of units sold. And I'm going to put in my multiplication symbol. If you have a numeric keypad, you can see that we have the slash for division, the asterisk for multiplication, the dash for subtraction, and the plus for addition. And then now that I've typed my multiplication symbol, I can click on this cell because it knows once I put in an operator that the next thing I do is going to be another cell address. So this is a great formula. I'm going to enter it and I'll look at the result and I'll say, okay, well, that looks appropriate. You always want to assess, don't you, whether that's an appropriate answer. And then, of course, I want to take this formula and I want to fill it down. I'm going to zoom in so that you can see this a little bit better. You perhaps know that to zoom your screen, you hold down the control key and zoom. And PS, yes, I am using a PC. And so if you use a different zoom mechanism, for Apple. I don't know off the top of my head what it is, but there is a zoom mechanism. Actually, you can do it manually here in the lower left corner of the screen. But I love this formula. It's doing what I want. So I'm going to fill it down. Remember this little square in the lower right corner. Do you see how my mouse changes from a big old fat plus sign to a single plus sign? That lets me know that I'm right on that corner. That corner is called the fill handle, and I'm going to put my mouse on it. I could hold down the mouse and I could drag, but do you know that we've got, I think there's about 500 rows in here. That's a big drag for me, so I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do is put my mouse on the fill handle, and I'm going to do a little click, click right there. Click, click. And it has filled it all the way down. Those of you who are doubting Thomas's, trust me, I'll show you later that it did in fact fill it all the way down. Okay, so what's the cost for these? Another little formula. So it's going to equal the number of units that I sold, and we're going to multiply that. So there's the asterisk by the number of unit cost, and we're going to hit the enter key. And again, I'm going to fill that down with my little click, click on the fill handle. Oh, because in this magnification, that column wasn't wide enough. We can fix that. And then we're just going to do a little equals this minus this to find out what our profit is. And there's our profit for that. Again, I'm going to double click my fill handle and shabang, that's filled down. Oh, column's not wide enough. Remember, on the vertical line to the right of the column between, in this case, N and O, I'm going to put my mouse on the vertical line and a little click, click, and it changes the column width. So those are formulas, and formulas are very popular. It's something that we do a lot. Let's change the width of these columns just because we can. Okay, so that's a little bit about formulas. Now functions, so I said I would go all the way down to the bottom. I could scroll all the way down to the bottom, or I could use control and the down arrow. It wasn't as many rows as I thought. It's only 101, but nonetheless, instead of scrolling, I'm able to do that easy control down arrow. But oh man, don't you hate that? Scrolling all the way down to the bottom of your screen, and now what the heck? What are all these columns? I can't see the column headings, so I don't really know what it is that I'm looking at. So I'm going to go back up. Control and the up arrow will get me back there. So I'm going to freeze the panes. I'm going to go to the view, and from the view tab, we have freeze panes, and I'm going to ask it to freeze the top row. So now when I do my control and down arrow to get to the bottom, oh, look at how much improved that is. I can now see what the column headings. There's no point in adding up the order numbers because what would that do for me? But I do want to know how many units in total have been sold. So this now is an opportunity for my first formula, my first function, excuse me, my first function. We've been doing formulas. Formulas are something you develop. It's something times something, something plus something, whatever, but formulas are something you develop. Now we're going to use the sum function to add this up. And the sum function is so popular that they've put it on the home tab. You can see here on the right side of my screen on the home tab in the editing group, they have put the auto sum function. And by clicking on it, it has looked at all of the cells above and said, oh, hey, look, cells I2 through cells I102, 101, I should say, have data in it. Is that what you wanted to add up? And it is, in fact. So that's all I have to do is hit the enter key, or I could actually click on the auto sum button a second time. Either way, I now have a total of the number of units sold. Now I know now that that's a good formula. It was well designed. It gave me the results that I wanted. And remember the fill handle that we talked about. I could put that sum function individually into all of these cells, but I'm going to take the fill handle. Here I am again. Remember, when I creep up on it, it turns into a solid plus. Again, on the apple, it's not quite the solid plus that we see here, but it is a different icon. And so I'm holding down the mouse and dragging it across. Do you see how far, if I just go a little ways, halfway across the next column, it doesn't really look like it's doing something, but I have confidence in Excel that it's going to come along with me. Oh yeah, look at this. Okay, very nice. It has, in fact, filled my function all the way across. So that was an easy way instead of having to do that to each column. Now, you know what's happened? The formula actually changed as it went across because it wouldn't work if the formula was exactly the same, right? If the formula was exactly the same, I'd get the exact same results. But as I took this formula and filled it across, and I hope you can see my formula bar, the formula bar is here on the upper left side of my screen. And the original formula, you may remember, was equal sum I2 colon I101. Okay, well, that was great. That was great when it was an I column, right? But now I'm going to click on this cell in J column. And again, look at the formula bar up here. It equals J2 colon J101. So this is something called a relative reference. This is outlined on one of the slides that you're going to be getting, but a relative reference is important to be aware of because your formula changes, and most times that's great. That's exactly what we want. Sometimes not so much. So we deal with both relative references and absolute references. And it's important that you understand when we use one over the other. So tuck that in the back of your mind. These are relative references. When we filled the formula down before, they were relative references. That's why it worked. That when we filled the formula down, it changed the formula based upon where the formula now resided. Okay, I'm going to leave this worksheet right now, or tab. The tab I'm working on right now is called Sales Records, but the one we're going to is called Beverage Sales. I'm telling you that in case you're listening to a recording of this and you are following along the recording so that now you're in the right place. Okay, so here's a larger worksheet. This looks a little bit more traditional, I think, than the columns. Hold on. Oh, Leola and I took a sip at the same time. Okay, so again, I'm going to try and show you these formulas a couple of times so that they're easy for you. So again, I'm going to want here, this is the fourth quarter total. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. This is the fourth quarter total, and that's in N, O, and P columns. And I'd like to add these across. Now I want to point out that here in M column, let me look in the formula bar. Yep, there are formulas in here, and that's going to come into play in just a second. When I click in this cell and click on the auto sum, oh man, look at those smarty pants at Microsoft. They made it so that if there's a formula like the sum function, you probably didn't want to double add that. So what we're doing is it stopped at that formula. And in fact, that's perfect, isn't it? I just want these 3 months added across. I will enter that. And what happened to that? It disappeared. Well, oh, isn't that weird? It's still there. Wow. Is that because of my magnification? Okay. Woo. Okay, we didn't really want the disappearing function. So let me zoom out a little bit. So that's great. I'll take the fill handle and I'll fill it down. But you can also see that we have a lot of other formulas that need to be, or functions perhaps, that need to be filled in here. So I'm going to quickly just do these three. What's this and why doesn't this have a number? Oh, that's a total. Okay. Okay, so we'll take these formula and add it across or fill it across. And now we've got some nice, well, that's not right. You know what I'm going to do is delete those formulas so that we don't see them. We're not ready for those formulas yet. So now we want to sum January, February, March. We want to sum all of these 12 plus the 4 quarterly. And we'd also like to total the yearly total. And so we're going to do this in a sneaky way, in a fast way, really fast way. When we're selecting a large range, and you can see that I have to scroll in order to see the end of this range. When we're selecting a large range like this, I like to select by doing what's called a click, shift click. I've clicked on this first cell that I'm going to be using, and I need to shift click. And by holding down the shift key, that's what I mean, is a shift and a click. Do you see that it's selected that range? And that's much better than dragging. The click, shift click is a much better method of selecting than dragging, because when you're dragging, sometimes it ran away, it's too much, not enough. So let's get all the drama out. And all we have to do is our click, shift click. Now note that I've got my data selected, right? But I've got one more column and one more row selected. This is going to be magical. Do you see how these are empty? I feel like a magician. I have nothing in my hand. I have nothing in these cells. But when I click on the auto sum button once, whoa, and the crowd goes wild. Amazing. Isn't that amazing? Excel filled in the formula in the last row and the last column. Oh man, one click on auto sum. Ta-da. Woof. I'm going to select the next range and use my auto sum again. Wow, isn't that amazing? So I'm going to scroll out a little bit so you can see the miracle that has happened here. Now the grand total. Can you imagine that what we'd really like is the totals, the subtotals here, to be added up to give us a grand total, right? Well, we could do that formula, certainly, use the sum function and use that. Or I could again select all of this data and one click on the auto sum button. And you might say, well, did it do it correctly? I'm not sure. Did it do it correctly? Well, always check your formula, right? It says it equals the sum of B25. Let me double click on this cell so you can really see. It equals the sum of B25, B19, and B11. Again, those smarty pants at Microsoft figured out a way of telling the program when you have subtotals, don't take the underlying information. That would be double dipping, and just take the information itself. Okay, and I'm going to show you one more function while we're in here. We'd like to find perhaps the average of all of these numbers. So I'm going to go back up to our little auto sum. I'm not going to use the auto sum, of course, but do you see there's a little pull down arrow to the right of auto sum? And when I click on it, it shows me some popular functions. and the average function is here. So I'm going to tell it that I wanted to average that. And I'm going to put in a comma. That will allow me to then say, and that, comma, and that, and enter. And now I have the average of all of our sales, and I can take that fill handle and fill it across, fix my column width here. And it's a beautiful thing. In a classroom setting, I would say right now, does anybody have any questions? But I have a lot that I need to cover, so I hope you understand that I am moving forward and going to be moving on to the next function, which is the concatenate function. Whoa, what? What did she say? The concatenate function. Yes, indeedy. What a concatenation does, is it joins together. I think it's one of the coolest functions available. What we're going to do, so I've changed the worksheet that we're looking at. Let me zoom in so you can see a little bit better. So we've got all of these employees, and we could sort them by employee number and by last name and by first name and so forth. But years ago, I worked at a manufacturing plant, and there were dozens and dozens of Patels that worked in that company, and many of them had the same first name. And so it would become important that they had some kind of a unique identifier. And of course, employee number is unique identifier too, but maybe they wanted to have this information so that they could sort it very easily in one fell swoop. And so what we could do is we could concatenate. I'm going to insert a column. I've just right mouse clicked on the letter D to insert this column. And I'm going to say name plus employee. Oh, not an E. Who said an E? I wanted pound sign. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to join this information together. This is not on that short list of functions. It is not. It's from the formulas menu, and it is a text function. It is not showing here. I might have to type it in, which is just fine too. I think I will. There was concat there, and concat, you might have said, might be like concatenation, but it's the newer, cooler function that Excel has developed. They're developing functions all the time. So I am going to type in concatenate, and here it is on the list here. Concatenate. So what we're doing is joining, and what I would like is a combination of the last name followed by a comma and a space, followed by the first name, followed by the employee number, maybe separated with a dash just because we can. And so how are we going to do that? That seems very complex. Not complex at all. So we're in the concatenate function, and I'm going to click on the cell for the last name. And then I'm going to put in a comma because that says to the program, that's the end of one argument. All of these string of comma separated items in a formula is called something I just said a moment ago that I forgot. Okay, so it is a segment in the function. So it's B2. Now, remember I said I would like it to be followed by a comma and a space. Well, how do I tell Excel I really want a comma because I just typed a comma. That comma isn't going to be anywhere. What I want to tell Excel is I really, really want a comma and I really, really want a space, but those are not numeric values or cell addresses, are they? So when I tell Excel that I really want you to do something and it's actually non-numeric characters, I need to use the double quotation marks. So do you see I've typed now a quotation. Now I can type a comma. And I've hit the space bar. Of course, you can't see that I did that, but I did. And I'm going to end the quotation mark. So that means literal text. Anything within the double parentheses is, or double quotation marks, is saying literal text. I literally want you to type that in or to include that. And then I'm going to put in the first name, and that is, oops, I'm not finished yet. Oh, I forgot to type a comma. So it didn't know that I was going to continue that string. All right, so here's the first name. And then I said, comma. Then I said, in addition, maybe I would like it to have a space and a dash and a space. And remember, those are non-numeric characters, so I have to put those in my quotation marks. Another comma, and employee number. Okay, so look at that formula. B2, comma, there's my quotation, comma, there's a space in there, quotation, comma, A2, comma, quotation, space, dash, space, quotation, comma, C2. Let's see what happens when I hit the enter key. Whoa. So now how easy would it be to sort by this? Well, you know what I'm doing next, though. Before I do that, I'm able to fill this down, right? Click, click. And now here are all the unique values. So I can very easily now sort by this, and I know that it's an exact sort. It isn't just a sort by last name or first name or employee number. It is sorted individually by the sum of these. So that's the concatenate. We use it a lot. Actually, I use it a lot because you really want your data separated as much as possible, like the first name column and the last name column. It's really important to keep that so that you do have the ability to sort by one column or another. But sometimes you want them to be joined together. And so as a result, we would be using the concatenate. Okay, you can see that here I have a little table over on the right side, and I want to know the number of people in each of our departments. Excuse me. I want to know the number of people in each department. Well, I could have somebody go through and highlight, right? In fact, I'd like to show you something. If I were to highlight these three, marketing, and then I hold down the control key, it will allow me to highlight that marketing and that marketing. I could manually go through this. This is just such an inefficient method, but I could manually go through this, couldn't I? And I could find out how many people are in the marketing department. And the interesting thing in Excel is that when you have more than one cell selected, there's automatically some formula going on that Excel is counting, because we have text here. Excel is counting how many cells I have selected. It's very small on my machine, but do you see here in the lower right side, just below my scroll bar, it's telling me I have a count of 8. And as I continue selecting cells, do you see now it's counting of 10? That is called a count on the status bar. That's the status bar area of your screen. And it is counting all of the cells that I have selected. It's an interesting idea. And another part of this is that if this was, let me go back to my beverage sales for a moment. If I had selected a group of cells, maybe a colleague wanted to know, some total that I didn't need to use or want to use a formula for, because it wasn't something that I needed to know, but I just needed to temporarily have a total for these. Do you see that I've got some cells selected, and down across the bottom, I actually now have more options, don't I? I have an average, an account, and a sum. If I right click in this area, you'll see that average, count, and sum are listed. If I used a numerical count often, I could add that to the items that are listed here. So these are all of the items that could in fact be listed here. I just clicked on numerical count, and do you see what Excel is telling me? Is they copied that number to the clipboard. That number 12 is now on the clipboard. Suppose it was the sum of those that actually I needed to send to a colleague. By clicking on the sum, it has put that number on the clipboard, and to prove that, I should be able to paste, and there you see it's a number. It is not based upon a formula, so just be aware of that. It is just a numeric character, series of numeric characters, whatever the sum was there just a moment ago. Okay, let's go back to the sheet that we were on just a moment ago, which was staff. Okay. So that's not how we're going to do this. We're going to use another function. This is the count if function, the count if function. And as you can imagine, what I want the count if to do is to count the cells if the contents are something that I determine, something that I identify. So again, I'm going to, that's actually a logical. No, it isn't. Because well, I'm going to type it in. Equals count, oops, sorry, equals count if. Count if. And there's a whole bunch of count functions. I'm just going to use the count if. Okay. So what's the range that I'm looking in? The range is from here down to cell 535. I quickly selected that by using the shift control down arrow, and it selected that whole column. And what is the criteria that I'm looking for? So that's the range. And what is the criteria? Well, the criteria is sales. Can you imagine? I can't just type in sales, right? Excel would say, what the heck is sales? Well, I have to tell it that that's literally the words, the text that I'm looking for. The upper lowercase doesn't make any difference. So there are 88 people in the sales department. I would like to take that formula and fill it down, and then I will just go back and change sales to HR and sales to personnel and so forth. So I'm going to take this formula and I'll drag it down. Now, isn't that interesting that it's giving me a different number for C-suite and IT? Firstly, they should all be the same, shouldn't they? Because they'd all be looking for sales. But remember that relative reference that we were talking about before? The range that we're looking for is E2:E535. But when I look at the next cell, it has changed that reference. It's moved it down one because it is one cell lower. And as I continue looking at this, it's continuing to move it further and further down. So there must be people at the bottom who are in sales who are now not being counted. So I could edit each of these formulas, but that's not a great thing to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say that this E2 and E535, those are absolute references. And an absolute reference is identified with dollar signs. I have put dollar signs in front of the E and in front of the 2 and in front of the E and in front of the 535. And that is fixing or making an absolute reference to those cells. It doesn't change the result of the formula, but what it does change is it allows me now to take that formula and fill it down. And now I can just edit each of these formulas. I double click on the cell to edit it. And I'm just going to highlight sales and say, this is HR. This is personnel. This is marketing. This is C-suite. And finally, IT. So if I change someone left IT and they're now going to sales, IT is reduced by 1, sales is increased by 1. On a very mundane way, if you are in charge of the yearly Christmas party, holiday party, and you need to know how many fish, chicken, and vegetarian you need, you could very easily use the count if function, couldn't you? And count if it's fish or it's chicken or it's vegetarian. So the count if function is something that is often used. Okay, let's introduce another function. This is actually one of my favorite functions. I don't have favorite children, but I have favorite functions. This function is called the today function. I'm just going to show it to you over here. And it simply equals today. And as they say, it takes no arguments. In other words, this is one of the few functions that doesn't have anything in the parens. Usually in the parens, there's some cell reference or some reference that you're talking about. But the today function is simply, it equals today. And when I hit the enter key, it says that today is July 19th, 2023. This is something that you might want to just put on your worksheet so that every time you print it, it will print the current date. That can also be done in the header and footer, but I'm not going there. But in any event, the today function is really dandy. So we've got the birth date of all of our employees, and we want to know on a continuing basis every day. We wanted to look at this and see exactly how old our employees are, the age of our employees. So we can take the today function and we can subtract from that, because the today's date is a bigger number than the day that these individuals were born. Remember, each day gets higher. According to Microsoft, the first day of the world was January 1st, 1900. So this doesn't work so well if you have people prior, that were born prior to 1900. But there aren't too many of those around, I think, these days. This used to be a problem when I was teaching this 30 years ago, but not so much of a problem now. So what we can do is we can say, all right, it equals today minus the date of birth. And let's see what we get when we do that. It equals today, remember left and right paren, minus the date of birth. And you might look at that and say, well, that doesn't make any sense. But it does. It actually does make sense. It's just a bad format for that particular cell. When you insert columns, they always take on the format of the column to the left. So the column to the left is date format. This is a date format. All we have to do is go to our home tab and say, you know what, that's not a date format. It's a number. I could indicate that it's a number or it's general. And there is the age. Now, is somebody really 10,430? I can hear some of you saying, no, of course not. That's the number of days. Yes, that's exactly right. That's the number of days that have elapsed since this person was born. Okay, so I'm going to take that whole formula and put it in parens, hence the order of operation, right? And I'm going to divide that by 365.25, 365.25, and enter. And again, it is a number. Let's just make it a number. Let's decrease the number of decimals. So we got this 29-year-old. We're going to double click the fill handle. Was there anything we wanted to freeze there? Nope, we wanted it all the way down. Okay, so that is the today function. Very frequently used with regard to date of birth, or it could be a shipping date, couldn't it? Like, you know, have these items shipped, or when did these items ship? How long did it take for these items to ship? So in any event, that's another use of it. We're going to use the lookup function because I want this table, I want the program to look at this lookup table and return the location of the person and what section number they're in. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this data and ask it to look up. This is actually called a VLOOKUP because the information is in a vertical format and it's not populating it because I forgot to type the equal sign. It equals, all right. This is a little bit more complex, and that's why I included it here, because it says, can you see this text that's popping up under the formula bar? What I'm looking for now is the lookup value. So it's saying what value should be looked up in the table? Well, it's the department. I want it to look up the department. And when it finds the department, I'm going to type a comma so that that is the end of that value. Do you see it says table array? Where is the table array? Well, here's the table array that it's coming from. And I always wanted to be referring to this. So you know what I'm going to do with that? I'm going to put in the dollar signs. Did I mention that I can do that easily by tapping the function 4 key on my keyboard? I don't have to manually go in and type all those dollar signs, but by hitting the function 4 key, it does that, and a comma. And then it's saying, okay, great. So what column in this table should I take the information from? So this department is column 1, location is column 2, and section is column 3. I'm going to type in a number 2. Close that paren and let's see what happens. It is not doing exactly what I would like it to do. Let me sort. That was the problem. This needs to be sorted alphabetically in order for this to work. So I had to sort my departments, and then it is telling me that HR is in the south, and I will tell it in a moment to take the information and put in the section number. So because that's a little complicated, I'm going to actually do it again. I can't believe it's almost 10:01. I'm having such a good time. I hope you are. I see that we've got some questions, but I've got a couple a couple more functions that I want to talk to you about. Maybe just one. So again, we're going to do a lookup. So it equals V lookup. What value am I looking up? I'm looking up the department. I'm still looking at the department, comma. Where is the table? Here is the table. I want to make that an absolute reference. So I'm going to do F4. Woo, brilliant. Okay. And what column number? This time, I would like column number 3 returned. And if I double click, it has filled it all the way down. So the idea here is that, so Pete Adams is in the sales department, but he was transferred to the marketing department. By changing something here, it is changed in our table. Conversely, if a department moves, so as it turns out now, the HR is going to move to the north location. As I change the information in the table, it changes in the lookup. So that I find is a pretty dandy function. I want to talk to you about an interesting function that may be, or a function that may be of interest to you. Again, I'm going to use my control and zoom so that you can see this. The function that we're going to use here is the PMT, or the payment function, and it's used when you are borrowing. So whether this is a mortgage or a car loan or some other type of transaction, I want to find out what my monthly payment is going to be. I have used this often when you go to the dealer and, you know, they're talking about different cars and different prices and different terms. It's kind of hard to ferret out the differences. And so as a result, I often build one of these. I actually brought one of these into a car dealer, but he told me to put my computer away because it didn't agree with his computer. So I did. I put my computer away and left, but we don't go there. Okay, so the payment function equals PMT, payment function. Now this one is a little complex too, because can you see that it's showing me rate? That's what's expected to go in this particular location. So this is the rate, isn't it? But remember, when they quote you a rate, that rate is actually an annual rate. And what we're going to do here is we're going to do monthly, oops, not a question mark, I want you to slash. We're going to be monthly payments. So we need to say that the rate is divided by 12. And how many periods? NPER is the number of periods. Well, there's 36. Okay, but I don't type in 36, right? That would be foolish to type in 36. If you can avoid putting hard numbers in your formulas or functions, it really helps things. I'm always frustrated when I see people typing in hard numbers. And the present value, the PV is a present value. In other words, it's how much are you borrowing? And for the sake of ease of time, because I know we're running out, I'll just say we're doing the whole amount. So when I hit the enter key, the Kia is going to cost me $817 a month. And if I wanted to find out, over the life of the loan, what it will be. It is the 817 times the number of times I have to pay that. And so I'm paying that, you know, now you can see the premium. I put in this Corvette because Leola has one of these Corvettes, and, you know, the columns aren't wide enough to show us how big that payment is. $5,000 a month, is that what it is? So the, you know, the dealers are always saying, well, you know, I can't afford $800 a month. Okay, no problem. Let's make it a 5-year loan. And oh, look at how much you've saved. Oh, you can do that. You know, that we can maybe do a lower interest rate. Maybe we can do 5.5%. So these allow you to do what ifs, right? Because we're not using hard numbers. Okay, I think I have run out of time. In fact, you know what? I have run out of time, and I saw Leola come back on, which was probably my clue to say, get off. I can see the hook coming out now. I see there are questions. Let's see. Will we be able to see how to create a dynamic calendar? That's very specific. We're not going to talk about that today, but I know that there are YouTube videos that will show you that. It's really not that difficult, quite frankly, because one day follows the next. So you can just have a formula, you know, I'll just quickly put in the today function here. And so it's, it says it's a date. I think I'm zoomed too far. All right, I'll put in the today function here. I can play this game. Equals today. You start with not the today function, but you start with the first day that you want a calendar for. And then you say, and this equals the previous cell plus 1. And you can take that and drag it across, you know, so that you get 5 days in a week, and then you copy these down. And it's really not that difficult, quite frankly. So check it out. Can you repeat how to freeze the title row? Absolutely. So easy, so important, isn't it? So here, I have a situation where I want this top row frozen. And so I like to click in the row that I'm going to freeze. I think that's left over from something else, but I like to click on it. And from the view tab, there is a freeze panes in the window group, and you can freeze the top row, you can freeze the first column, or here's a kind of a dandy one where you can freeze a specific area. So if I wanted to know, if I wanted to be able to see the policy and the expiration date as I scrolled over to the right, I could click on this cell, and under freeze panes, I'd go to this first one because it says it keeps rows and columns visible where all the rest of the worksheet scrolls based on the current selection. So everything above that selection, everything to the left of that selection is frozen in place. So now as I scroll on down, lovely. And now as I scroll across, I will be able to always see those first columns. Okay, good. Able to, okay, done. Done. When you shift plus click in the area, it didn't include the quarterly totals too. You know, it doesn't look like the first cell is in fact selected. I think that's what you're referring to, but it is. It is. It just, that's the active cell. So if I accidentally type something, it goes into the active cell, but the other cells are still selected. So there's always one cell that looks like it's left out, but it hasn't been left out. It's just a click, shift click, And to just reiterate that, if I wanted to then select more cells, I would have to use the control key, and that would allow me to select discontiguous. Okay. Okay, done. On beverage sales, how does the yearly total column know to skip the values in the quarterly columns? In other words, why is it not totaling all the columns? Because it's smart. I tell you, these guys at Microsoft know how to make a formula. They say, well, you wouldn't want to do that, right? It did skip it, right? This is saying it equals the sum of Q6, M6, I6, E6. Yep, because it saw that the underlying information, you wouldn't want to double it up. And so as a result, it just knew that. Pretty smart. Wondering if you will cover finding a certain cell with, say, the word corn, collecting them all, copying them, and posting them to a new sheet. I think I'm out of time for that. That is about 5 steps, but if you email me I'll give you my email address. I'll put it in the chat if I can find the chat. Here we are, chat. Diane McKeever @gmail.com. If you email me, I will talk to you about that. When using the age formula, why did you divide by 365? You forgot that we have leap years. Let me answer that. Okay. You forgot that we have leap year every 4 years, right? So everybody knows that there's 365 days in a year, and then, oops, every 4 years, they throw in that little zinger do. So without that 365, it would be off periodically. So we make it 365.25. Good question. Can we review how to reference cell data from a different sheet? Oh, yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's say that for whatever reason on this sheet, it's a whole nother sheet. On this sheet, I would like it to show me the yearly total for the beverage sales. So you start by going to the receiving sheet, the sheet that the information is going to be displayed on, and you just simply type an equal sign. You know that means it's going to be a formula, whatever follows. So I'm going to click on the sheet that I want this information coming from. And then I click on the cell on that sheet. And if you look at your formula bar, so it does begin with the equal sign. And do you see how beverage sales, it has a single quotation around it. That means, and an exclamation point, that means that's the name of a sheet. And then that's the cell within the sheet. And I'm going to hit the enter key. And what should I see when I hit the enter key? Firstly, I'm going to see that it changes me over to the quota sheet. And secondly, I'm going to see that it shows the words yearly total, because now I can take this formula, and this one I'm going to have to fill down manually because it really doesn't know when to stop. But now it has linked the information from the other sheet. So this is 43,000 was the first number, and sure enough, 43,000. But what if I were to change one of these numbers to a big number? So now it's 118. If I go to the receiving worksheet, it's 118. That's a very, very, very important question, because I see people have stopped sending me their worksheets just because I say, you know, what were you thinking when you did this? I try and say it nicely, but why did you type that number in? How did you get that number? I know that you multiplied this by this, or that you use these numbers. Why didn't you create a formula to do that? Because numbers change, don't they? Numbers change all the time. And if you're in charge of remembering to update numbers. That's not going to happen. Please display column 1 cell so I can quickly see the formula. Oh, sorry, I'm not sure where we were at that time. Sorry. Should it be 26,000 minus for a monthly payment formula? I should have done that and I didn't, and I was running out of time, so sorry. The equal today formula. Did you like that? Oh, did you want me to show you that formula again? Because that's all it is equals, equal today, left, right, paren. That's all the formula. There is nothing to it on the inventory sheet. Now I've forgotten your question. Let's see, Jamie. When you shift click, it didn't include the quarterly totals in the auto sum. It did, yeah, it really did. It just didn't look like it. Okay, I think we're through all of our questions. Yay. I did not look, Leola, on the chat to see if there are any other questions, mostly because we asked.
No, it looked like most people we were taking them from the chat and putting them over to the Q&A. I mean, there was maybe one, but you either covered it or it's long gone.
Or it's long gone.
Yeah. we tried to filter everything in the correct direction and hold it until the end for the most part.
There's a minus in your function bar. Okay. Good. No, this looks fine. I don't see too many chat issues. Okay, well, I'm going to stop sharing because I think you have a couple of things that you need to.
Yes. Let's see.
Yes. Of course, leap year. I know, of course, leap year. Look how we forget those little things. How very important, how very important. Yes, so if you have any questions, you can reach me a number of emails. I gave a different one. But Diane@DianeMcKeever.com is always good, or Diane McKeever @gmail is good. And I did write a book. I forgot to tell you about that. I did write a book that's available on Amazon, and there's a whole section on Excel. It's called 100 Amazing Computer Tips. And as you can imagine, it's a dry book, you know, very hard to read. No, it's not. It is written for the average person. That's my goal. Okay, go ahead, Leola.
Okay, well, thank you for answering all of those questions.
Yes.
And just a reminder that you can find us at SCORE. Let's see. Oops. Oh, no, I have messed up. Let's see. I have so many pop-ups on my screen. All right, you can find us at score.org/Minnesota, where you can request a SCORE mentor or sign up for another webinar such as this one.
And we're mentors too, right, Leola? You might.
Yes,
be
both Diane and I have our mentors and have clients in the Sarasota Manatee area. I'd like to thank all of our attendees today for attending and learning more about some great functions in Excel. And then just wanted to let you know that you will be receiving a short survey to let us know how we can improve, or to let us know any other topics that you may be interested in. Diane and I are also both part of the education committee. That's why I'm hosting here today. So we would love to know what you would like to learn about, and we will see what we could do to provide a webinar about that. Thank you once again for attending, and have a great day.
Bye-bye all.